Welcome to another episode of Conservative Talk Chicago. I'm your host, Jack Novak. Along with my team, we post weekly episodes that includes interview and commentary, reviewing the most important political issues without the liberal bias of mainstream media. If you're as frustrated as we and feel that most mainstream news is disingenuous, then welcome to Conservative Talk Chicago. We welcome your questions, concerns, and ideas. Please send them by email to talktome@conservativetalkchicago.com. I'd like to take this moment and share an observation I've made regarding the Republican Party. I have been acting the observer from the sidelines for quite a while now, trying to distance myself and stay uninvolved so as not to stir the pot, hoping matters would resolve themselves. I am now forced to pay attention to the infighting and the inconsistent policy actions from fellow Republicans regarding values our party is supposed to represent and stand for. Values such as supporting law enforcement and public safety, fiscal responsibility, and to safeguard our children, standing against woke initiatives and grooming. I've seen members of the party turning their back on these values, and I've seen other members of our party attack those who have done so, calling them rhino and worse. I don't support turning our back on the values we were elected to support. Every elected official that ran as a Republican should openly support the interests of the people who elected them to office, and not cherry-pick what values to respect. And there is no such thing as being a Republican and calling oneself bipartisan. Bipartisanship and nonpartisanship define an independent, one who's either supporting both sides or no sides. We are conservatives. We are right-leaning, from far right to moderate, but we are not far left-leaning. For example, we do not think most abortions should be legal, but there is precedent for looking at certain situations objectively. And there is certainly room for discussion to determine when the performing of an abortion is just destroying some cells or the taking of a life. Maybe the terminology is too broad and misleading. Either way, this issue is going to continue to be a point of serious contention until we can do a better job of figuring this out. But there are boundaries. Does any Republican think that a partial birth abortion is justified? Isn't it killing a baby as it is being born? I don't believe any sane Republican would support this. That is a very far-left, radical, and callous perspective that I'm happy to believe is not shared by many. So there are basic values shared by most conservatives, and we should vote like it. Voters want confidence that their elected officials will stand up for their basic values and support the issues the voters elected them to respect. Abstaining from a vote because it doesn't appear to be popular, being worried about alienating another party, or trying to placate a minority of very local voters doesn't make sense, especially when the only outlet for gauging the extent of such dissenting public opinion is based on the reporting of liberally skewed polls and the liberally biased media. Don't all conservatives complain about the unfair, skewed reporting of the liberal media? After all, who wouldn't believe in law enforcement and public safety? Why, criminals and proponents such as liberal politicians and special interests working to manipulate and abuse the system. That's who. Why would we play into their hands and weaken our own party? Additionally, there is another aspect or side to this coin, and it is a coin, so to speak. As for our party, it seems we always keep coming up tails. The popularity of elected officials and how they vote, when their vote runs counter to party values, appears contrary to the interests of the people they were elected to represent. And for some, this apparent betrayal makes their blood boil. Anger can forge a damaging, visceral response, especially if amongst those angered one has a penchant for communicating well and attracting followers with whom they share their concerns and complaints. This foments animosity and trouble within the party, as complaints between members promotes factions, resulting in indirect assault, anguish, and frustration. And this never resolves any issues. What it does do is make our party look weak and divided, as you waste a lot of time and energy. Our party is made up of many conservative minds, from extremists to moderates of differing degrees. We must learn to set aside our differences and work together if we are to save Illinois from the far-left radical progressive liberals. That means we have to convince not just all Republicans to vote, but also the swing independents, who believe in our message, but don't believe in us. We fight too much. We rationalize, and our message has become murky. And face it, some of the issues dividing us are not going to be resolved. However, the one thing we have to remember, above all else, is that we are all on the same side. As Republicans, we need to stand for the basic values our constituents elected us to stand for, and our voices need to reflect what our constituents who put us in office expect of us. If the hard Republican voters who always vote wanted left-leaning progressives in office. I suspect that's who they would vote for, if they voted at all. And when soft Republicans or swing conservatives fail to vote in an election, aren't they sending a clear message that they don't believe in ours? By our inconsistent acts in office, are we sending a message to our constituents that we are indecisive and won't necessarily support the basic values and the platforms that we campaigned on? And by our actions, are we convincing our Republican base and the right-leaning swing voters that their voices will not be heard and their values disregarded? Who would bother to vote if they felt our party was indecisive and weak, apparently in shambles, and not worth supporting? The answer is obvious. Only the most diehard voters who always vote. And the rest of the population just says, why bother? If we are to get the respect of all conservatives, including the swing voters and soft Republicans, if we are to engage a greater turnout of voters, we need to give them a reason to vote, a reason to believe in the people in office and those candidates running for office. Look, we all know the truth is being mischaracterized by polls and the media. It's their shtick. TDS, lefty logic, New World Order, call it what you want. Since neither the truth nor the true opinion of the population is being reported, Republicans cannot base their actions and stance on misinformation. Doing so is not reflective of the truth. It is foolish, and a disservice to the voters who elected the representation. However, it behooves us to stop and remember that we are a party trying to find our way in a new frontier, and that our members are the voting public, supportive of common sense legislation, and not the ideology of far left-leaning radical progressives. They support common sense initiatives, such as funding the police, all police, and letting them do their jobs, rounding up criminals, whether they be U.S. citizens or illegal aliens. Safeguarding the population by keeping abusive, violent, and dangerous repeat offenders off our streets and behind bars when an arrest is made. And how about protecting our children by not exposing them to sexually explicit and politically motivated propaganda, which, by the way, is called grooming. And shame on those who would even support this. There are so many issues and so much controversy that trying to navigate all this is like trying to drive in a blizzard, difficult to see and fraught with danger. But the first step to resolving any controversy is to stop fighting amongst ourselves, to let tempers and anger subside, and then hold discussions without bias. That means trying to listen and understand each other, and not attack each other. Discussion without judgment. That should be our goal. However, our party game plan also needs some work. One thing we seem to do a very poor job of is sharing our message. Most mainstream media is not our friend, so we must learn to be creative. We must regain the public trust, and it will take some work. But when we take a stance, say regarding a given legislation, we need to explain to the public exactly why certain actions were taken. Excessive transparency should be our motto, especially if we are trying to convince those voters who have felt marginalized that their voices are truly being heard, their values truly respected, and that their party is worth supporting. I know this is no small task, and it requires time, strength, and courage. The strength and courage to face adversity with brotherhood, kindness, and understanding. To work together and not fight amongst ourselves. Recognizing we don't always have to agree, but we need to respect each other. We must have faith in each other, which is also no small task. We must remember that in our lifetime, we do not walk in each other's path. The unique path we traverse molds us, shapes our responses, and refines our perspectives. We must also remember that we are members of the Republican Party, and that even as moderates, most of our goals are still aligned, that they are common amongst us. And most common is our wanting what is best for our friends, neighbors, and constituents, not ourselves. That's why they call what we do public service. But we can only achieve commonality and unity if we work together as one party, continue to talk to one another, and come together as a team, united in direction and purpose. And once united, those conservative voters on the sidelines, watching the confusing, unconstructive, argumentative, and divisive rhetoric, who feel their voices have for far too long gone unheard, may once again feel confident in the Republican Party, returning to the polls to vote, and show their solidarity, realizing that our state is not a lost cause to abandon, but worth fighting for together. Thank you for listening.